American Football Stories is brought to you by Coach Paint. Coach Paint is a great tool that allows us to add graphics to player highlight clips similar to the graphics you see on TV. Coach Paint offers the ability to clearly tellustrate video while increasing retention of information in a shorter amount of time. Up your game with Coach Paint today.
What time is it? Game time! It's gonna be special. They gonna talk about this forever.
Welcome to American Football Stories.
Puts his head down, crashes and spins, and dives. Touchdown!
Bringing together the many perspectives that make up college football in the NFL.
Football is one of the greatest sports ever invented.
From players and coaches.
Believe, baby, believe, baby.
Hey, we playing to win right here, fellas.
To the front office and scouts.
The public is finally beginning to catch up, but they don't even know half the truth.
Us against the world, let's get it.
Your hosts, Robert Parker and Nick Knudsen, bring you American Football Stories.
Welcome to the American Football Stories podcast, brought to you by Coach Paint. This is part 2 of our Senior Bowl episode. We will feature the defense. I'm your host, Nick Knudsen, joined as always by my co-host, Robert Parker. And Rob went down to the Senior Bowl last week in Mobile, Alabama. We were originally going to do just one big episode on it, but it was so long we decided to cut it into 2 parts. So we did the offense in part 1, defense coming up here in part 2. We hope you enjoy it. We're going to jump right in.
Cam Sample from Tulane on the defensive line on the American team. Carlos Basham out of Wake Forest. Malik Herring out of Georgia. Marvin Wilson out of Florida State. Quincy Roche out of Miami. Wyatt Huber, Kansas State. Chauncey Golson, Iowa. Marlon Tuipulato, sorry for the pronunciation, USC. Peyton Turner, Houston. And William Bradley King out of Baylor. That makes up the American team on the defensive front. The guys that jumped out to me, Rob, Cam Sample just looks like he's NFL ready right now with his size. Basham, quick dude, Wake Forest, good tape. Roche, Temple transfer, was the American Conference of the Year. Comes down from Miami. And Chauncey Golson at Iowa had a couple of really good reps. He's got some good tape from what I've seen too. Daniel Jeremiah thought Roche stand out from Miami. I think he came into this week as a likely day 3 pick, rounds 4 through 7, but he probably pushed himself to day 2, rounds 2 or 3. Based on his work at the Senior Bowl, I came away impressed at how hard he battled from rep to rep. He just kept showing up in team drills. He has heavy hands and a motor that runs hot. Gotta love those scouting terms, Rob. I know a lot of those guys stood out, but I know you also like Malik Herring out of Georgia.
Yeah. Unfortunately, he got kind of banged up in practice, so he didn't get a chance to play in the game. But, early in the week, he was definitely, one of the best defensive linemen out there. And I tell you, one of the disappointments for me was actually, Marvin Wilson out of Florida State. It really just seemed like he wasn't in shape. He was actually slow, coming off the ball. It just seems like he was lethargic. I don't know. I don't know if he was just having a bad week of practice. I don't know if he was banged up. I know later in the week he actually sat out of practice, so maybe that was kind of slowing him down. But I was just disappointed in what I was seeing out of Marvin Wilson because he was one of the guys who I actually was thinking highly on, making that transition into the next level.
This was a guy that last year around this time you were seeing him for next year's for the 21 draft being projected as a top 10 pick. Marvin Wilson from Florida State. To me, I've followed a little bit what goes on at Florida State, being down here in the Sunshine State. He was one of the guys that little Twitter happy for my taste, where he's calling out the coaches on Twitter. I believe he was one of the main ones that said after one of the incidents this summer where Mike Norvell overstated, not Norvell's guilty on this, but Norvell apparently overstated how much he did to talk to the team. But apparently they reached out via text message to the guys, letting them know if they want to talk. And Norvell made some comment like, oh yeah, we talked to the players and they know our door's open and blah, blah, blah. Wilson basically went on Twitter and tore him a new one and threatened that they were going to sit at Florida State. Rob, I know we got a lot of power. We saw this in a couple different forms with players using their power almost in a threatening way. We saw it from Kylan Hill, got a positive result there in Mississippi, changed the state flag. That's been a fight going on there. Maybe he gets a little too much credit for that, but he was certainly one of the pieces of impact. I know there's people behind the scenes that have been fighting for that for, virtually a generation to get the Confederate flag off the Mississippi state flag. That's been a fight that's going on a long time. But Kylan Hill made a statement he wasn't going to play if they didn't change it. And then all of a sudden you got Lane Kiffin and Mike Leach in the State House talking about change. So, hey, good for them for supporting their guys. And that's certainly probably that helped it push it across the finish line for sure. So Kylan Hill, you do get a little credit on that front. But we saw that result. We saw the Mike Gundy situation with the running back at Oklahoma State, which I feel like a total idiot right now. Give me the running back's name at Oklahoma State.
Chuba Hubbard.
Chuba Hubbard, right. We saw that whole situation with the OAN shirt where no doubt that Mike Gundy watches and is cool with OAN in my mind, but he probably just didn't think anything of wearing the shirt, and Hubbard's threatened to sit out the season. Look, we can disagree on politics. We can agree on politics, whatever, but these guys using Twitter to threaten to sit out over some of this stuff. If I were an NFL scout, I'm not asking you to agree or disagree with their points or the coach's points or the situations. I'm not asking that. But if I were an NFL scout or team, a general manager looking at that situation, do I want to draft a guy who's going to become a part of my building, a part of my team, a part of my organization, to be the type of guy that keeps things in the locker room and comes to me and talks to me about it like a grown man? Or do I want to hire someone who's going to go to Twitter and take things public like that? Who would you hire, Rob?
Honestly, that is just kind of the climate that we're living in right now. Everyone is taking everything to social media. This is the influence and the power of social media, which is a gift and a curse, if you ask me. A great story that came out while I was down at the Senior Bowl in regards to, drafting the right player was Matt Rule. He actually got a chance to be in the elevator of a upcoming football draftable player last year, and pretty much he kind of found out everything he needed to know in that elevator ride. So once again,
it's called an elevator pitch for a reason, right?
Yeah. So once again, I tell you what, just with the social media that, these guys have, whether they're on social media actively, whether they're off of social media actively, their personality and their traits is going to come out one way or another, whether they broadcast it in the locker room or whether they broadcast it outside the locker room. But yeah, like just going back to your point, Nick, you definitely kind of want to keep things in house. You don't want want things to leak out in the media realm, because once the media get holes to it, whether it's social media or team media or just media in general, they can kind of change the narrative of the story. So you kind of want that player to kind of keep their emotions intact and kind of keep everything in house.
I don't care if he stormed into. Like, for all I care, go to Mike Norvell's office, kick it down, and say, "You're full of it, coach. I hate," and then threaten them inside the building. Just don't go to Twitter to do it. Like, maybe that's the part of me that's like the part Italian side of me that's got the little bit of the mafia mentality where it stays in the family. And if you go outside the family, you're a rat. And to me, Marvin Wilson, borderline unforgivable sin if I'm a GM. With that Twitter stuff. Like, I'm telling you, and I say that Twitter stuff, I sound like an old Bill Belichick going that FaceTime, that face Instagram face stuff. Like, I'm not trying to sound like that. I understand. I use Twitter. I use social media. I'm not talking about not using social media. I'm talking about using it responsibly. I'm talking about using it like a professional. And if you got a problem with your coach, it's just like any other person with a job right now wouldn't post like a tirade against their boss and then threaten not to go to work on social media. And I'll put a caveat on there, unless they're a freaking idiot or they're irresponsible or both with it. And that's a huge red flag with the Marvin Wilson situation. Even if he's making a legitimate point, if he's got a problem with the way the coach is communicating, great. Go talk to the coach about it, though. Talk to your assistant coach to talk to the head coach about it. don't put it out and air your dirty laundry in public, because if I'm an NFL GM, that's almost something. It's just like you were talking about earlier with some skills that Kadarius Tony has that you can't teach. You can try to teach it, but kind of guys are who they are to some extent. And if you're willing to do that in college, I'd be worried about you at the next level too on that. And Marvin Wilson, not the greatest era at Florida State. Like, this was a guy who was top 10 pick on. I don't mean to keep piling on the guy, but that was something that really stuck out to me this fall from him. And I think his draft stock's going to fall a little bit. I'd be very surprised if he ended up going in the first round, even though he's clearly a top 10 talent, Rob.
Yeah, he's definitely a top 10 talent. But once again, if his draft stock falls, I don't think it will fall necessarily because, of the Twitter spat that he had with Mike Norvell this fall, leading up to the season. I don't think the season was started yet. I think it was leading up to the
preseason.
Season. Yeah, preseason. I think his stock is going to, fall because of, his play and because of his performance, throughout the week of the Senior Bowl practices. And, what he's going to have to put on a flawless pro day to kind of, boost his draft stock up again. But I tell you what, I just think it's a lot of, defensive linemen that kind of, push them to the side and kind of build their draft stock. So he's definitely going to have to fight and claw to kind of, get back into that top 15, top 20 realm.
Well, when he's right, I piled on him, so let me compliment him. When he's right, he's an absolute monster. There's a reason why his name worked up into that stratosphere, because when he's right, he's a force in the middle. So theoretically, his stock might fall, but might be a good gamble to take in on day 2 there. Someone might get a steal with him, but he'll be an interesting name to watch in the draft. I also like Peyton Turner's tape out of Houston, big guy, East-West Shrine Bowl selection as well. Let's cut over to the national team. John Cooper at Ohio State, Jonathan Cooper out of Ohio State, Dalen Hayes out of Notre Dame, Rashad Weaver along the defensive line from Pittsburgh, Shaka Toney, Penn State, Ellerson Smith, Northern Iowa, Taquan Graham, Texas, Patrick Jones II out of Pittsburgh. Couple name. There are 3 last names in a row that start with an O, and I should have done better homework on this, Rob. I apologize ahead of time, but we're gonna call it Ada Ogundeji out of Notre Dame. I need to go back and do my homework. I'm sorry about this. And Osa. I'm not even going to bother. Osa O out of Utah and Levi O out of Washington. Taron Jackson out of Coastal Carolina as well. Sorry, folks, we don't get pronunciation guides. I should have gone and looked those up. I did see those names earlier. I didn't think about saying them out loud. That's on me. I'll fix that. I'll get better. Rashard Weaver out of Pittsburgh, though. Good season out of the guy. He's a guy whose stock's gone up and up. He had a solid career at Pitt, Rob, and you're seeing Pat Narduzzi. You saw Patrick Jones had a nice play in the game too. Pat Narduzzi's producing some defenders out of Pitt there, isn't he?
Yeah, he really is. And Rashad Weaver, he definitely looks the part. He, just like I said earlier, in regards to, Josh Palmer, Jay Fitzpatrick, those guys, they looked apart. They looked apart in regards to their position. And Rashad Weaver is one of those guys. He had an exceptionally season. He kind of had some ups and downs in practice throughout the week, but I definitely think he's going to be a steal for a team moving on the next level.
One guy that really jumped out too in the game, Ellerson Smith out of Northern Iowa. Man, that guy is he was surprisingly large for an FCS player. Did you happen to catch a couple plays that he made during the game?
Yeah, I actually did. And just like you said, it really seemed like this was the stage for the smaller school guys. And they took full opportunity of it, and they actually performed well. And I think, now, their performance in practice and in the game is going to help, smaller schools moving forward to get this opportunity. So I loved it across the board for these smaller school guys to actually come and show up and show out and compete against, the larger names and the household names that we see week in and week out.
Also really liked what I saw from Osa Odigizua out of UCLA. How about that, Rob? Did I crush that?
There you go. You got better on that.
Odigizua. Man,
You didn't butcher that one.
I do my homework. I can't talk about all this stuff without doing my homework. I don't want people thinking I don't do my homework. I do my homework. I just didn't do that. I made a mistake. My bad. But Osa Odigizua out of UCLA. He he beat that guard from Bama who was Deontay Brown.
Yep.
Beat Brown on a play, and I think he showed his value on that play alone. Just a quick dude. He could play inside, play outside. He's got some size too. Versatile guy. Definitely the type of guy the NFL is looking for these days, especially like in a third down pass rusher role. What'd you think about him this week?
Yeah, he's another one of those guys who put a good week of practice together and actually made some good plays in the game on Saturday. So I think moving forward, this defensive line group that's coming out, they don't normally necessarily have the star and the star power that you would normally see from year to year, but you actually have some good playmakers in this group of guys. So I'm looking forward to see how they do at their pro days and see who actually goes off the board first.
Last one, Taron Jackson out of Coastal Carolina. Just really, when I watched Coastal's tape, did a segment on him for the East West Shrine Bowl. He was the East West Shrine Bowl selection as well. Taron Jackson really jumped out on tape. Big physical guy, looks NFL ready on the spot, even in college. What did you think about him this week? How did he play practice?
Yeah, same thing. Just like I said, he's another one of those. I can't emphasize this enough, Nick. Just seeing these small school athletes come up to the Senior Bowl and just have a field day, throughout the week. I'm not necessarily overly dominant, but holding their own. And that's what you ask for these guys because, it's always a narrative surrounding, some of these smaller type guys is like, oh, well, what if they played in the SEC or what if they played in the Big 10 or the Big 12? Could they compete? Could they hold up week in and week out? Well, you know what? I think some of these guys coming down to the Senior Bowl is proving like, hey, yes, I can hold up, week in, week out in all of these Power 5 conferences. And just like we talked about, and we always have this conversation, sometimes you have these guys, they just get missed in the recruiting process, or either they become a late bloomer. Perfect example, Khalil Mack, out of Buffalo in the Mack conference, who thought Khalil Mack would be who he is today that we know him in the NFL because he came from a small school. JJ Watt, he's another one who actually transferred. So it's just these smaller school guys, they can actually compete. It's just like they have to get the opportunity. And I think Jim Nagy and his staff actually afforded a lot of these, smaller school guys the opportunity to kind of come down to the Senior Bowl and compete.
Yeah, especially in a year where they're the only game in town. That definitely helps those guys. Hey, one of the things that I think that one of the position groups that I think was loaded from top to bottom with the linebackers. Guy that you talked about to me early in the week that I didn't know a whole lot about, but he almost blocked 2 punts in a game where you're really not supposed to block punts. Grant Stewart out of Houston. Phenomenal hair, by the way. Charles Snowden was picked for the game out of Virginia. This is the American squad. Jabril Cox, LSU. Jordan Smith, UAB, Patty Fisher, Northwestern, Monty Rice, Georgia, KJ Britt, Auburn, Riley Cole out of South Alabama, a little hometown action, and Janoris Robinson out of Florida State. Let's start with Grant Stewart. What do you think of the linebacker out of Houston? Definitely can fly around, a little undersized at the NFL level, but seems like a guy that can fly around. I got him on tape chasing down Zach Wilson to the edge, who as one of the best nicknames in college football this year, the Mormon Manziel. That guy can fly. And Grant Stewart chased him down to the edge and tackled him before he scored a touchdown in their game this year. So Stewart can get around and fly around. Love him early in his career at special teams, though. I'm not sure he's a starter on day one, but he'll be a contributor from day one on special teams.
Yeah, he surely will. Like, I tell you what, this guy, Grant Stewart, is a firecracker. He was all over the field in practice. He was all over the field in the game. And if you recall, in that pretty much that open and punt, he kind of went down there and he just laid it, the boom on Demetri Felton out of UCLA. And you can hear it throughout the stands. So it was a hard hit. And that's just the intensity and the motor that he plays with. And just like you said, he is a little bit undersized, but I tell you what, he's going to run sideline to sideline. He's going to compete and he's going to shed blocks and he's going to get up and butt up and make the tackle. And if he doesn't make the tackle, he's definitely going to misdirect the defender and flow him to traffic. So, his teammates can make the tackle. So I really like Grant Stewart on the next level. But, just like you said, he's probably going to have to start out, with the special teams, kickoff return, punt return, everything, and they kind of work his way in to the field. But he's definitely not a day one starter, but he could definitely groom into being a consistent starter in his career and having a long career.
Guy that didn't play this week thanks to an injury later in the season, broken right ankle, I believe, was Charles Snowden out of Virginia. And this is a guy who could put his hand on the ground, stand up. I believe he's 6'7", big guy, but he's lanky for his position. He's not needs to put on a little bulk at the NFL level, but will probably have no issue doing so. I think he could be an absolute. He can be an absolute steal for a team looking for a versatile defender that, especially I think of him as in like a third down situation at the NFL level, just being a guy you could throw on the field immediately in his rookie year. What do you think of Charles Snowden's game out of Virginia?
Yeah, he didn't practice and play just because you mentioned, Nick, because of that injury. But the one thing that I want to point out about Charles Snowden is that the field wasn't open to the fans or to the media or anyone because of the COVID protocols. But I was right in the mix of things, and I was close enough. And one thing that stood out to me is that Charles Snowden was actually just egging his guys on and just helping them through the reps from a mental aspect. He was cheering them on. He was actually, saying, hey, do your push-ups if you messed up. Hey, go back and do the rep over again. So he was actually being a teammate. So I could actually see him coming in and being a leader in the locker room. And I saw that, this week because it was something that he was consistently doing day in and day out at every practice, just getting his guys ready, knowing that he's not out there competing because of his injury. But just getting back to your point, I can definitely see him, making that transition and coming in on the third down situation and, hey, go rush the passer, that NASCAR type package that, certain teams run. But I really like him as a prospect. But once again, unfortunately, didn't get to see him because of the injury.
Jabril Cox, North Dakota State product that played his grad transfer year at LSU. Definitely looked like a killer pickup for LSU and was one of the few bright spots. We're too busy. Everyone was too busy trashing LSU's defense to really give Cox a ton of credit this year, but he played pretty well. He was one of the few bright spots there for Bo Pelini's only year in Baton Rouge under Ed Ogeron. Solid play, just a big athlete who can fly around, can cover, can tackle, do everything you want a linebacker to do. I know he picked up a ball that bounced off a turf and ran it back in the end zone, but he did it even the way he did that, it was just super athletic looking in the moment. So I think that Cox is an intriguing prospect. Again, guy, special teamer from day one. I think he'll develop into a very solid starter early in his career.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I know he was getting a lot of buzz, making that transfer over to LSU to kind of replace a lot of those defenders that left and went off, to the NFL. And he actually, he proved himself, he proved himself this year. He proved himself in practice this past week at the Senior Bowl, and he proved himself in the game. I think he's a competitor. He's a guy who's willing to be coached. He's willing to learn, and, he's flying around to the ball and he's having fun out there. And anytime you have those ingredients within that linebacker position, it's going to be a good recipe for success.
Another guy that's jumped out, long arms, Janarius Robinson out of Florida State. Just you want to talk about an athlete coming off the edge. This guy is a third down pass rusher. Could be something else in the NFL, I think. But definitely a guy that if he can't get to the quarterback, he can at least get his arms up and wreak some havoc up front. What'd you think of Robinson's game?
Yeah, I'm definitely right there with you. But one of the things about Janarius Robinson is he's still a little raw.
Yeah.
You kind of want to see him, add a little bit development to his
Put some
game
weight on too.
as a pass rusher. Kind of have a go-to move to kind of get to the quarterback. So I think he'll pick that up with the right coaching. But right now, it really seems like he's winning off of his athletic ability.
We saw a lot of Baron Brownie and Justin Hilliard out of Ohio State. Those are two guys I highlighted in season in the playoffs. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on them, but I really like Browning's game at the next level in particular. By the way, Tough Borland, Ohio State linebacker, was there as well. Not as quick, but definitely a really bright dude who's got who can definitely get in there. That was something that was coming from. By the way, that part's not coming from me. That's coming from Jeremiah when they're interviewing him. He was talking about how he was particularly highlighted in the national championship, Tough Borland getting burned by Devontae Smith. But he talks about normally that doesn't happen to him because normally he doesn't play Devontae Smith all the time, and also he's usually in the right spot because he watches a lot of tape. So Tough Borland trying to overcome some athletic deficiencies with a little more viewing of the tape. Rob, that's definitely a guy I'm okay taking a late round shot on if I'm an NFL GM.
Yeah, speaking of Tough Borland in that interview, I tell you what, he was having a lot of time down there with some fans that was heckling him as well. I know we were down in Alabama, so no matter what part of Alabama you're in, it's still Roll Tide, and it was a lot of fans out there was just saying thanks for covering Devontae Smith, thank you, and they were letting him have it, but he was having fun with it, and he kind of understood like, hey, unfortunately, that was the matchup. And he didn't win that one-on-one matchup. But at the end of the day, don't feel bad, Tough Borland. You're a linebacker trying to cover Devontae Smith. It was safeties and cornerbacks, throughout the year that couldn't cover Devontae Smith either. So,
I don't think anyone covered Devontae Smith.
So, but yeah, the fans were definitely heckling him, all week long in regards to, thank you for covering Devontae Smith. Thank you for pretty much, solidifying us another national championship. We appreciate that.
Yeah.
So I thought that was kind of, interesting with the fans interaction with Tough Borland down there.
Yeah, you want guys named Tough, TUF, by the way, for the folks at home who do not know the spelling of his name, just TUF. You want a guy named Tough plugging the A gap on 4th and 1, not covering Devontae Smith 25 yards downfield.
Or if he's covering someone downfield, maybe a tight end, or maybe a running back out the backfield, but not Devontae Smith.
Okay, another guy, former quarterback. I said that right. QB, folks. Chaz Surratt out of North Carolina. Rob, this is a guy whose tape I watched in the preseason. Really, really like this guy's game. Think he's going to have a solid, long career in the NFL. How do you like Surratt? By the way, is he brothers with Sage Surratt?
Yeah, no relation.
No relation?
No relation. But I tell you what, Chaz Surratt is built like a tank. And he just, it was a meme that came out during the Senior Bowl in regards to Najee Harris quads, and they was calling him, Quadzilla and everything, and they were saying, hey, he stacks up with, Saquon Barkley in regards to his thighs. But I tell you what, Chaz Surratt is right there because he is definitely put together well. He really looks like he's an inside linebacker that's going to be very essential in the running game. The only thing that may have concerns with me is the fact that, if they have to spread him out and you want him to cover, maybe he's a little bit inept in moving his hips and being fluid in that particular situation. But as far as being that inside linebacker that's going to hold up against the run, he's more than capable of doing that. So I definitely think he will transition well on the next level.
Just your typical quarterback turned linebacker. That's all. That's normal. By the way, I did look it up. They are brothers. Sage Surratt and Chaz Surratt. I only asked that because that's such a weird name. You don't see that too often. I thought I read that somewhere in the preseason, but it's been several months. That's why I asked.
Yeah, I recall them not mention that at the Senior Bowl this past week. I knew they took a picture together, but for some reason I kind of read the report that it was no relation between the two.
Okay. Yeah. Liars. Anyway, Hamilcar Richard. It's a guy I've heard about at Oregon State. Didn't really pop in the Senior Bowl to me at all in the game. What'd you think about him in practice? Because that's a guy I tried to watch some Oregon State football this year. I watched that Oregon game, but I didn't get to watch it too much, too close with Oregon State this year. I think I watched them against. Did they play Washington? I think I watched a Washington game maybe too. But Hamilcar Richard Jr. What'd you think about him?
Yeah, it didn't jump out at the practices with me, too much. I do like his size on the next level, but once again, I can't really speak too much in regards to him because he didn't jump out on me, especially not in the game, but not in practice as well.
Then let's talk about Tony Fields because I know that's a guy you reached out to me and you said you're very impressed with Tony Fields, and I think the rest of the Senior Bowl was because they named him the linebacker of the week.
Yeah. Now I tell you what, he actually jumped out in practice all week long. He's the West Virginia grad transfer from originally from Arizona. And he actually looks the part. Like he really looks instinctive at the linebacker position, and he looks like he can hold up in the run game, and he can cover out the backfield, and it lines up in the slot to kind of hold receivers as well. So I think he is the complete package. And I tell you what, he was named linebacker for the week for a reason.
All right, let's jump to the cornerbacks. And Rob, this is a marathon of an episode, but we're gonna milk that your time in Mobile for every bit that it's worth. You good? You need a break? You need a water drink or something like that? You need a quick drink?
No. Let's bang it out, dude. This was an exciting week of football. Wish you could have came down there, but given the COVID protocols and everything that we're dealing with the pandemic, it was glad to have one of us down there, and maybe next year both of us will be down there, taking it in.
If one of us is there, then American Football Stories is there, and that's all that matters. Good for the team, man. It's good for the team. All right, I'm going to kick myself on a pronunciation guide again, but for the corners, I fet to Meli. It's Meli Fonowa. I remember them saying on the broadcast. I'm not saying it well here. Gonna do pronunciation guys from now on, I promise. From Syracuse, Brian Mills from North Carolina State. This is North Carolina Central. This is the American roster, by the way. DJ Daniel from Georgia, Robert Rochelle from Central Arkansas, and Aaron Robinson from Central Florida, UCF. DJ Daniel, not great coverage on one of the touchdowns, but overall solid corner. Those Georgia quarterbacks have been pretty solid at the next level. They've been producing good products. But let's talk about two of the smaller school guys, Brian Mills and Rochelle out of Central Arkansas. Any of those two jump out to you this week?
No, not really. I tell you what, some Central Florida guys really jumped out for me during the week of practice, and Aaron Robinson and Richie Grant. Those
Man,
two
Jeremiah loved Richie Grant.
Yeah, for some reason, I don't know what they're putting in the water down there in Central Florida, but it really seems like they have a pro prospect corner year in year out. And I know another guy that that was an East West Shrine guy that he's coming out in Tay Godwin. He's another one of those Central Florida guys. So I don't know what kind of water they're drinking down there in that secondary room.
Yeah, it's apparently the type of water that sends your coach to Tennessee. I don't know, but yeah, a lot of good products coming out of UCF for sure. Makes you. I think I'm seeing more UCF than Tennessee on here, as a matter of fact. Let's go to the national roster. Ambry Thomas out of Michigan on the corners. Rodarius Williams, Oklahoma State. Thomas Graham Jr., Oregon. Keith Taylor Jr. out of Washington. Trey Brown, Oklahoma. Cameron Bynum, Cal, and Benjamin St. Just out of Minnesota. Both of those last two guys, East-West Shrine Bowl selection. Watched a lot of film on both. Bynum is a corner that can make a lot of plays. Physical guy. He's going to hang in there. I think he's pretty sticky on coverage too, from what I've seen. Both down the field, and he could step up on a slant and deliver a hit or make a play. What'd you think of Bynum's game out of Cal?
Yeah, he actually had a decent practice, throughout the week. But out of this group, one guy that really stood out to me was Keith Taylor, the defensive back out of Washington. He kind of resembles that Carlton Davis, those tall physical corners,
He
and
looks tall.
it really looks like that's what the team's kind of going for, that Jalen Ramsey type of defensive back out there on the edge to kind of compete against the DK Metcalfs of the world, the Mike Evans of the world. But Keith Taylor, he competed all week long, and he was physical. And I tell you what, he has the athleticism to back up the physicality. So I think he's going to be a good corner, depending on whatever system he plays in, whether it's going to be, man coverage scheme or, cover 2, cover 3. I think he's capable of playing multiple, schemes and doing fairly well.
All right, let's stay in the secondary, but we'll jump back to the safeties. You have Joshua on the American team. 2 Missouri safeties, Joshua Bledsoe and Tyree Gillespie, staying in the SEC. You got Florida and LSU represented, Sean Davis with the Gators and Jacoby Stevens with LSU. Florida State, Hamza Nasser-Reldine. Again, the pronunciation guy. I'm really kicking myself here, Rob. Mark Webb is not a hard name to say out of Georgia, and your boy Richie Grant out of UCF with the special water. Rob, Sean Davis, physical guy, flies around, can absolutely deliver a hit. Doesn't wrap up though on those hits all the time, and guys can bounce. They might bounce back 2 yards if they stay on their feet, and then they gain 4. So not always the biggest fan. We did see him have an interception on an absolute gift in the Senior Bowl. So it wasn't like he was in great coverage or anything. Just a little bit of a present there. And also, I did like Jacoby Stevens because I watched this film for the East West Shrine game, and he's a playmaker. He can step up in the box. He can deliver a hit. He can also fall back and make the pick. Jacoby Stevens can do a lot of things at LSU.
Yeah, he really can. And I tell you what, on this roster, he was the one that stood out to me. You speak about Sean Davis. He is a firecracker. He's not afraid to stick his nose in there. And just like you said, he doesn't wrap up all the time, but he definitely gives a effort. But once again, he has a lot of deficiencies in coverage. And if you want to put somebody back there on the back end at the safety position, you kind of want them to hold up in coverage. And Sean Davis just doesn't have that in him. Could he get better? Yes. Have I seen that improvement, over the course of his career? I really haven't. He really didn't look good in the one-on-ones. He got beat, even though it was Kadarius Toney, he was beating everyone, but, he got beat by, his former teammate and Kadarius Toney. I saw him get beat by Trevon Grimes, another teammate out of Florida, and he really got beat by Josh Palmer. He really, really looked bad. He kind of, got turned around and lost his balance and slipped and fell. It was really bad one-on-one in that particular matchup. So I think, Sean Davis.
In fairness to Davis, he's a safety lining up at corner, covering these guys one-on-one in these drills, right?
Yeah.
Not something he's going to be asked to do a whole lot.
Hopefully, depending on what team he goes to, you kind of see those Buda Baker, those Tyrann Matthews, those type of guys.
Do they call that scheme though because they're Buda Baker and Tyrann Matthew though? Because if you're drafting Sean Davis to be that guy, you're making a mistake.
Yeah, I think you are. I think, if you draft Sean Davis, you're probably going to have to put him in that Jamal Adams role where he's going to be close to the box, where, he's going to blitz and, he's going to cover running backs out the backfield, not too much covering, wide receivers down the field. I think he's a in the box safety more than a single high safety. But at the end of the day, you kind of want to see your safety kind of hold up pretty well if you have to cover a tight end or you have to cover a slot receiver. And I just haven't seen that out of Sean Davis, throughout his career or this past week at the Senior Bowl.
Well, tell everyone what's so great about Richie Grant.
On the flip side of Sean Davis, I mean, Richard Grant just seems like he can do it all. It seems like he can be that in the box safety where you put him down low, or you can put him back as a single high safety. So I just think, Richie Grant is a complete package. And in his one-on-ones, he actually was covering those receivers in his one-on-ones, unlike Sean Davis. So he was actually showing the scouts and NFL personnel that he can hold up if he needs to cover a slot receiver or a tight end who flexes out. So I think Richie Grant really upped his draft stock this week.
Richie Grant played a little corner in the game, if I'm not mistaken, too, just to show off that versatility a little bit. So definitely got to keep your eye on come draft time. Richie Grant, UCF. Trey Norwood out of Oklahoma on the national side. Darren Hall, San Diego State. Divine Diablo, Virginia Tech, one of my favorite names of the draft process. Christian Upholf, Illinois State, and DeMar Hamlin out of Pittsburgh. Let's talk about those last three, Rob. Divine Diablo had some, aside from having an awesome name, he showed a couple plays there in that game that he could definitely step up, deliver a hit. But I think I like him more as a hitter than in coverage, though. What do you think?
Yeah, he's very physical. He is very physical. He's not going to shy away from contact. He's definitely going to come down and he's going to try to lay the boom. And unfortunately, we're talking about Sean Davis. We don't want to rip him too much, but we talk about tackling. And I tell you what, Devon Diablo actually tackles. He doesn't try to lay the hit stick hit every single play. He actually just tries to get the guy down, and he does a good job of doing that. But just like I said, I wouldn't leave him out there as a single high safety. I kind of, put him down in the box on the next level. But I tell you what, a person who can do it all is Damar Hamlin out of Pittsburgh. Man, he is a talent that is going to be a steal for a team out there. He can cover, he can come down, and he can wrap up. He's just a smart safety. He's just one of those safeties who's not going to wow you about his physical attributes, but he's just a smart, instinctive player, and he gets the job done. And, it looks effortless sometimes with DeMar Hamlin. And I tell you what, a team that drafts him is going to be happy.
Pittsburgh gets overlooked a lot, but Pat Narduzzi is producing some serious talent out in Pitt. And you got to think, this is really the last couple of years of the first guys who have fully gone through an Narduzzi program there. So good to see. I think that's a good sign if you're a Pittsburgh fan to see these guys on the field here making plays who are going to be solid pro football players, because that's the type of athletes you want to see at a program like Pitt. Daniel Jeremiah, final thoughts on the safety. Richie Grant. If you wanted to find Grant on the field, all you had to do was follow the ball. Jeremiah said on NFL.com. He was around it all week long. I was really impressed with his performance in one-on-one drills. Like you said, Rob, Grant proved he can cover a man and play deep in the middle. That's a good combination as far as NFL teams are concerned. That's right. I mean, that's nothing we didn't highlight there. Let's just go over just the list of guys here. Long snappers. You had a couple of long snappers. We don't need to go over that. Kickers, Jose Borregales out of Miami, who was the Lou Groza winner. Riley Patterson out of Memphis was 2 for 2 on the day. Borregales didn't even get an attempt to kick. And the punters, I believe, are both Australian, because that's who the studs are nowadays. James Smith out of Cincinnati, 4 punts for 148 yards. And Max Duffy out of Kentucky, 4 punts, 156 yards. Rob, excellent analysis across the board, man. I'm putting you through the ringer. We went through the entire Senior Bowl roster here. But what are some final thoughts on Senior Bowl week, man, about your trip?
Yeah, I tell you what, it was fun, and I was glad that I got the opportunity to go down there and see these players firsthand and see them up close. Just not having a combine, it's really going to affect, certain players. And I'm just glad that these guys got the opportunity to go out there and showcase their talents. And they actually, came out and took advantage of it. Some players more so than others, but I think altogether it was a great experience for these guys. And I'm glad that Jim Nagy actually, went through and had this thing go through as planned. So take your hats off to Jim Nagy for putting this together, and all the coaching staffs on both sides of the ball, from the Dolphins to the Carolina Panthers, and everybody that just came out there to show support for the recent Senior Bowl. So it was an awesome experience, and we're definitely going to be back next year.
Looking forward to it, man. Looking forward to it. Hopefully we can do a little East-West Shrine Bowl too with our friend Dan Shanka. Look forward to that as well. So definitely helps seeing the guys in person when you're talking about them. We've watched a lot of tape this fall. We got a lot of good film, but good to get up close and personal and see the guys in action. Rob, great work down in Mobile on behalf of American Football Stories. Boots on the ground, baby. I think we got a new saying this week too with the boots on the ground. But fantastic work overall. And thanks for the report, man. For all you listeners out there, thank you for listening to American Football Stories. We'll send you out with the word from our sponsor, Coach Paint. American Football Stories is brought to you by Coach Paint. Coach Paint is a great tool that allows us to add graphics to player highlight clips similar to the graphics you see on TV. Coach Paint offers the ability to clearly tell a straight video while increasing retention of information in a shorter amount of time. Up your game with Coach Paint today.
Thank you for listening to American Football Stories podcast. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel, American Football Stories. We are working to grow our network on YouTube and we'd love to have you subscribe. You can find us also on Apple Podcasts, on Twitter, at American FB Story, and on our website, AmericanFootballStories.com. I am Robert Parker. My co-host is Nick Knudsen. This has been another episode of American Football Stories.